We are hopeless, selfish creatures, and we need a savior.
She was a total heathen.
All right, we're doing a podcast.
Hi, everyone. I'm Erica, and this is not Kate. This is Jamie. Jamie is filling in for Kate because she is not feeling very well this week, but we are still
an ExMo
and a NeverMo Walk Into a Bar. She is also an ExMo. I'm, as always, the NeverMo, so it's pretty much the same thing. Just pretend it's Kate. No, she's going to be great. We're super excited. Thank you so much for helping out, stepping in when Kate is not feeling so great. So thank you. And this is our very special guest. This is René Steelman. And we were actually on her podcast a little while ago. So I'll let you introduce yourself, say anything that you want to say. We're super excited to have you here.
Well, I am super excited to be here. I found Kate first on TikTok, and then I found you guys together, and I absolutely love what you're doing. So I was thrilled to have you on my podcast. She became visible, and even more thrilled to be here with you today. And I am also an ExMo. So yeah.
Yes. So we are super excited to have a conversation with you. We are still shooting at Land of a Thousand Hills. It looks a little bit different because they were very busy in the actual restaurant today. So we had to move into the sort of overflow room, which is actually just as lovely as the actual restaurant. So yeah. So
more peaceful.
Yeah.
It's a little more peaceful. It's a little more chill. There's not like coffee machines running all the time. So that's great. So let's get started. I want to hear, I know like just a tiny little bits of your journey, and I've had the opportunity to chat with you sometimes, just before the podcast and whatnot. So I know little bits, but I would love to hear in your words, your journey from Mormonism into the real world.
Yeah, the real world. Well, it's interesting because I started out, my mom is one of 8 children. Grew up in the Midwest. It's Methodist church was right across the street from my grandparents, apartment. And I grew up saying my prayers on my knees at my bedside every night. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. Had a picture of Jesus, but we were just good Methodist people. We were what do they call them? The Easter Christmas family.
Oh, okay.
That, went to church, talked about Jesus, said grace over our meals, but it wasn't like a really big thing. We weren't like reading scriptures or anything like that. We were just good, typical Methodists. But my mom's oldest sister was a Mormon, and people in like her brothers and sisters talked about it, but it wasn't a big deal. It was like, oh yeah, Marilyn's Mormon, and so it was like no big deal at family gatherings.
So, but did she convert?
She
her
converted.
Wow.
And she's the oldest of the 8 children. And I don't really know what her conversion story is, but her husband never joined. Her 2 children joined, but never were active. But when the missionaries came knocking on the door, my mom was already kind of familiar, and she had been kind of searching for a church. And I remember my brother and I have a brother that's 3 years older than I am. And I remember when she said, I'm really looking into different churches, and I've been thinking really seriously about Catholicism. And my brother and I went, no. And this was like,
not that, please.
10 and 12, because we just knew we had friends that were, of that religion, and we weren't like, oh yes, let's all do that, Anyway, the missionaries knocked on the door, and they were sister missionaries.
Whoa.
So my mom felt very
That is unusual.
Yeah, this was the 60s.
And if you don't live in Utah, you maybe don't know, but usually the people knocking on your door are boy missionaries.
Yeah.
We have never had girl missionaries knock on our door.
Yeah.
I've seen them walking around.
Especially in the 60s, because they had to be 21 to go on a mission.
Yeah, even just until recent.
Really, it was.
Yeah, it was like 5 years.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit longer.
Yeah.
And by the time they were 21, they had 5 or 6 babies.
Yeah.
That
Which
you
that
take
was
care of.
the idea.
Yeah. And the one was Joseph Fielding Smith's, great granddaughter or something, and she wasn't married yet. So, but anyway, it took my parents a long time. They didn't join the church right away. It took them about a year. My dad, I was living with my stepdad and my mom, and he was British and really was not excited about it. And it
I can't imagine why.
yeah, it took a lot of cajoling and a lot of dinners over at the bishop's house and a couple sets of different missionaries, but they
Yeah.
finally joined.
So was your
And-
mom really driving that for
Yes.
him away from Methodism?
Yes.
Your
And
mom
here's
was like, I
Mormonism.
want to be a second-class citizen.
Well, I
Just joking.
I did
Sort of.
this is my own opinion. I can't speak for her, but from just what I saw and felt, I feel like there was a special person elitism about the Mormon church. We're the only
Yeah.
true church.
Yeah.
I mean, there
We're
is
the
that.
only
Yeah.
ones that have a prophet,
That's
and it
kind of
gave
just
her
like
some
themselves.
kind of elevated place in the world. And it actually, so we joined the church. I was 12. My older brother was 15, and my little half brother was still, he couldn't be baptized. He wasn't old enough yet. But it became my mom's mission to convert her family, which tore the family apart. So suddenly these great Father's Day gatherings that we had had annually our whole lives, graduation picnics with the family, Thanksgiving, things, where all the 8 siblings got together. Well, 7, one of them died in World War II, but, got together, aunts, uncles, sleepovers, all of that came to a halt because my mother would not stop trying to convert her brothers and sisters. And they would say, please stop.
Yeah.
We're good. I'm Lutheran. This person's Catholic.
Mhm.
We're all good, and we don't want to hear about your church anymore. And she would not relent. But she did eventually baptize one of her sisters, and she did baptize my grandmother after my grandfather died. But she only stayed in the church for like 6 months, and then she's like, "You people are crazy."
You think she did it
You
to
know.
appease your mom a little bit?
I
or, like,
think she
felt
did
really-
it maybe like, oh, sure, what the heck? It's no big deal to me. But I think what did her in was when she went through the temple
Yeah, the temple.
because my grandparents were being Masons. And
They were like,
She's like,
wait
I've
a
seen
minute.
this before.
exactly.
Yeah.
She walked out of the temple and said, well, that's just a Mason thing.
Yeah.
And never,
Yep.
that was, I think, her downfall.
Yeah.
She's like, you people are crazy. Never put on garments, walked away.
Right.
The other thing was, I remember them telling the story about when it came to the sealing. She said to the lady, look, I didn't like him when we were alive. I don't want to be sealed for time and all eternity. And they were like, just do it.
Oh.
You don't know what it'll be like. She's like, fine, whatever. So she just went along with the whole thing, walked out of the Oakland Temple and said, yeah, I'm never doing
No,
this.
thank you.
So yeah.
And I just want to back up for a second because we have like 2 separate sets of listeners. They're the Mormon folks who are all familiar with all this.
all familiar with
And
the
those are
words. So
those
there
are
you go.
Kate's friends, and then there are my friends who are like, "What the fuck?" Like
Yeah.
they don't, or like the
What are you
ex,
talking
or
about? Yeah.
never Mormons who don't know any of those things. So anyone who is not Mormon, in the temple ceremonies, I've learned after being in so many conversations, way more than I want to know about Mormonism and temple ceremonies. But all of the temple ceremonies, Joseph Smith basically stole from the Freemasons.
Yes.
And so that's what she was referring to. Once you get into the temple, there are all these sort of cult rituals, which are pretty bonkers.
It's very theatric.
Yes. That's, and you've been through.
I've been through this. I've actually been through many times.
Oh.
Yeah, it's definitely. I don't know how long you were.
Well,
in it
we
after
were
being-
married in 74, so I
Okay.
got to go through the slit your throat.
Yeah, which
Your
I had
vows.
only.
the whole
yeah.
this thing.
Yeah.
I'd only heard about that, and honestly, so when I went, they were still doing the women put their arms up and like
Obey.
swear to
Yeah.
obey their husbands, and they've actually stopped doing that recently. And it's kind of funny because like the temple is supposed to be this the like deepest connection you can have to like
Right.
heavenly, and if you can change it, like
Yeah.
I just
Through social pressure.
yeah, exactly. It's like I get it. Yeah, that is really fucked up to
But-
do that. But like, I thought that God was like unchanging. You think God's like, yeah, TikTok has really changed the game here.
Yeah, I have changed my mind. Women don't have to obey all the time anymore.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you know what's funny about that is I think one of the other reasons why people are encouraged to marry young, because before your frontal lobe is completely developed, you just go along. Like they say, you are the religion of your area of the world that you were born into.
Mhm.
Really,
Yes,
right?
yeah.
And so you've got 20-year-olds going to the temple. I went to the temple when I was 20, almost 21.
Mhm.
And I remember I was so excited to get married. And my family being, religious, we believed, I remember when my mom was taking the discussions and she told the story of the missionaries that were in England and the evil spirits came and they were thrashing on the ground and then they had to, kick and we all like, wow, ghosts. Yeah. We played the Ouija board. I mean, instead of playing cards as a family, we would sit around and do the Ouija board. So I'm used to all this
That's funny,
spooky,
yeah.
ghosty stuff.
Good for you.
So I'm going
Yeah.
to the temple and I'm like, yeah.
It didn't freak you out the
No,
first time. You were like, "This is great. Bring on the cult rituals."
Spiritual, spirit.
Yeah,
Oh,
and I remember,
supernatural
so
spirits.
excited to get married and thinking, oh, I'm going to do laundry, I'm going to cook dinner,
Yeah.
I'm going to obey my husband. Yes, and so, but honestly, before I even considered leaving the church, that was a sticking point for me. And in 2018, they changed it. That's when they changed the temple ceremony and took
Okay.
out the whole thing.
Yeah.
And so I thought, all right, I'm going to go back one more time. I got to see the new thing.
But you were out at this time.
Well,
or you were
just mentioned-
You still had a temple.
Oh,
I still
didn't
had
realize it
temple
was so
then.
recent
Yeah.
for you.
Yeah, I was kind of starting to be like, okay. And I went to the temple and they had switched to this new thing, but it was weird because they've even changed it since then. It's like Adam and Eve were sitting weaving baskets. There were palm trees. I'm like, have
They
we
have a
moved to
video,
Hawaii?
Yeah.
I don't know where palm
Yeah.
trees in Missouri.
Yeah.
And it was, and they were trying to make it more where she was like, Adam, come on. He's like, okay, you're right. I mean, they tried to be more female participant type thing. And I remember
They
just
have a
going,
voice in the relationship.
yeah. And
Not
I was like,
finding-
yeah, and they
yeah.
turned to the
Yeah.
camera at the very end together and
Yeah.
said, we have decided to do this.
Yeah.
But I remember going, nice try. This isn't. And I said to my husband, and I had no intention of leaving the church, but I did come out of the temple in 2019 and say, I will never go back to the temple again.
Yeah.
So I
Wow.
thought, I can be a good Mormon. I will follow all of the rules. I will not go to the temple. I will not raise my hand to obey you. I will not. This is crazy.
And it was just all the stuff from before that suddenly like
Yeah, it
hit
just
you.
clicked.
Yeah.
It was like, wait a minute, I'm not going to obey you. You don't. I said, do you, when you are doing your washing and anointings, do you bow your head and promise to obey me? And he goes,
So laughable.
and I said, I do. And he goes, you do? He didn't know. He doesn't know what the women's thing is,
Yeah.
And I said, when Adam and you guys that aren't, you're like, what is she talking about? But in the film, they're trying to portray the Garden of Eden.
The movie in the
They
temple.
see you, just for context, when you go through the temple, you dress up in these clothes and you go through sort of these ceremonial rooms. And at one point, this is the bulk of it, right?
Yeah.
You're sitting in a theater and there's a big screen and they show you a film that is like the creation of the universe and then Adam and Eve and the story of angels talking to Adam and Eve. It's very dramatized. Like, yeah, so that's just context.
So it's just Genesis. We're going to start out with Genesis,
Exactly,
work
yeah.
our way into the promises, and
Yeah.
And so in the beginning, they portray Adam, and he's like playing in the water. It's like just flipping his hands around.
Boy shit.
And she comes up and she's like, Adam, we got to leave. She just had this thing with the snake and the apple. She's like, we got to get out of here. And he's like, what? And she's like, look, do you want to stay with me? Because if you want to stay with me, I'm leaving. And he's like, okay, fine. So, I mean, and so that was my whole thing. I'm like, wait, she gets it. She understands the thing. And you're just like, I'm not leaving. Why don't I leave? So I just thought, I'm done with this. This is,
Yeah.
But I think that was an accumulation of patriarchy that I had put up with, but I had pushed it down because I put it down as a human fault. This is not the church. This is this crazy man that's just been called to be a bishop who's nuts. It's his fault. It's not doctrine. It's not policy. It's not priesthood. It's just his personality. And so I ran into patriarchy and I just summed it up as being because I had great bishops. And then I had bishops that were, they had never had a powerful position in their life. And this was the only time they had been given authority. Their job hadn't given it to them, their career, nothing had given them any kind of authority over people. And so this just went,
Yeah.
and I
Bishop
saw
roulette,
that.
they call that. You might get a good one, you might get a bad one, you might get one that cares about you, you might get one that's like has a chip on their shoulder or a power trip.
Yep.
And
A power trip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I put up with that and I just, wrote it down as that's life, right? That's what you deal with.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it wasn't until 2020, I think when COVID hit, COVID, I swear it was a gift from Some people left church during COVID.
that is true. Yeah.
I heard one of the things I heard about COVID that one of my, and maybe this is like sort of similar. One of my friends was in a relationship that ended during COVID, and my husband and I actually got really, when my
A lot
friend,
of people did. Yeah.
Yeah, my friend said COVID was basically like life is a canoe, and COVID was like a turbo engine put on the back. It set everyone wherever they were going a hell of a lot faster. And I feel like that because they were in a like kind of bad relationship, and like we're like, whoa. And my husband and I were like, this is kind of nice because we can spend so much time together. We just like hung out and had oysters and whiskey on the back porch. But it sounds like it drove you out of the religion.
I heard other people say it gave them that second Saturday.
Yeah.
Where they finally realized, wait a minute, why am I putting, 45 hours in work and 85 hours at church? And now all of a sudden I'm spending time with my family. And so I think that was a lot of reflection that people did.
They're like, this sucks. I'm out of here.
Or they're like,
but for me, it was like, and I know you've been on Mormon Stories, but I don't know how it started, but I somehow heard about the CES letter. And honestly, I read it and I thought, what's the big deal? They'll steal a few horses, chariots, whatever. Joseph Smith's still a prophet.
Yeah.
I just wrapped it up as like, he just did the best he could.
Right.
We always gave him that way out, right? He was just a dumb farmer that was doing the best he could. So I wrote it off to that.
Yeah.
But then I decided, well, all right, if I'm going to watch Mormon Stories, I'm going to go back to the first one when he was active member of the church, because I don't want to listen to anything that's anti-Mormon. I want to listen to the Mormon.
You wanted to find a loophole kind of to explore those thoughts.
His first broadcast was with Greg Prince. And Greg had written the biography of David O. McKay. And David O. McKay was the prophet when we joined the church.
Right.
And so we loved him.
This is all different. I'm like, what? This is, I don't know any of this. This is new. And this new Mormon stuff for me to learn.
His prophets. He was over 25 years. I think he was a prophet. So all through the 60s, I think he died.
When was Spencer W. Kimball?
He was in the early 70s.
Okay.
He's the one that did the priesthood, took away the priesthood ban in 78.
Okay.
So he was, a prophet for a long time.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, I'm going to read this. Greg Prince is a good member of the church, and I love David O. McKay, and I'm just going to start out with this biography. And in the biography, because David O. McKay's secretary kept a journal and minutes of every day of his life, practically. Everything was written down, and Greg Prince, this fabulous research man, just brought it all to light. And the biggest contention for me was they had talked about the priesthood, David O. McKay being a nice boy from Utah and Idaho, and he had never been around people of color. And so he was a faithful man. So he kept saying, well, I would love to take the priesthood ban away, but God hasn't told us we can do this yet.
God's told us we should race this, so we should probably continue to do that.
And we believed it. We believed it because you're indoctrinated. You just
I understand. Yeah.
And but then when I started reading the people that were trying to get the priesthood ban, and then Ezra Taft Benson was one of the apostles, and my mom, when we joined the church, she was just right. She fell right in step. And when she found out that Ezra Taft Benson was a member of the John Birch Society, she was right there with him. If it's good enough for Ezra Taft Benson, I will join the John Birch Society too. And when I read about how he had tried so hard to get David O. McKay involved in John Birch, and he tried to run for vice president with Wallace, who was a huge, segregation, horrible racist man. And poor David O. McKay kept saying, Ezra, you're an apostle. You can't do that. And I just read the politics, and all of a sudden it hit me. These are just men.
Yep.
This is just a corporation. This is just a board of directors, like any other group. These are guys sitting around a table in a conference room, making up plans and rules and calling it doctrine and revelation.
And weirdly, they're at the top of the food chain and everyone else is underneath them. And it's God's plan. People of color, LGBTQ, women, all second, third, fourth class citizens. And weirdly, the people making the rules have heard from God that they're at the top of the pile.
And that's
remarkable.
all I needed. Everything else that I read just verified that. It wasn't one. Well, I have to say, I do have to say, I remember reading a book, or maybe watching John Delan, I don't know. And I remember my husband was in the family room and I was in the bedroom, and I came storming out of the bedroom and I said, "Did you know Joseph Smith translated the Book of Mormon with a rock and a cat?" And this was a bishop. My husband was a bishop. He goes, "No."
Really?
And I was like, "Oh no, that's garbage. No."
Yeah.
And that was a breaking point.
Yeah.
So it wasn't something bad that happened to me. It was just me seeing how these men were running the church.
Yeah.
And then it all made sense. Oh, that makes sense. Polygamy was brought in by
Of course.
revelation.
You
It
had-
makes sense that I need your money by revelation.
If I were going to make up a religion, I'd be like, yeah, I get like 20 husbands and you
Yeah.
just get one wife.
Yeah.
So,
So you're
just joking.
shelf
I wouldn't do
in
that.
that.
my shelf, but I didn't know that I was building a shelf.
Exactly. That's
It was just
Yeah.
life experience that I had chalked up
Yeah.
to a true church through revelation, a prophet was inspired through God. And I realized, oh, you're not.
yeah.
You're not inspired. And so everything fell apart. Then
Yeah.
you see everything then.
Yeah, that's what I've heard a lot, which is really fascinating to me, that it's not this, because, I always, the people that I know that are so indoctrinated, it's hard for me to imagine them just like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Like, it feels to me like it would have to be this very slow, but so many
Yeah.
people who've been on the
Yep.
podcast or people that we've talked to just say, it's just like that. The light goes on and you're like, wait a minute. Like, so
you wake up.
snap out
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
I
Like,
was
that's the
I was a
trance.
second counselor in the elders quorum when I left the church. Like I was, which it's not a huge thing, but I was like, very active
Yeah.
in the war.
I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, whoa, you're
well,
at the
I mean,
top
it's
of the
like
top.
a lot of people have that rule, but I was no. Well, that's a whole. We'll get to that when we
That's
do.
a whole-
We're gonna do
Yeah.
a whole episode with Jamie
Yeah.
and just talk about
If
the whole
everyone's
story. But
interested.
definitely feel free to share.
Yeah,
like,
no, I mean,
throughout
I tried to serve a message. It's a whole thing.
Okay.
It's way too long of a story to get into.
We'll let you tell
But,
your whole story.
Yeah, but at that time, like my daughter had just been born. I was in the elders quorum, and I read the CES letter, and I called my wife at the time. I went into work really early. I read it at like 4 a.m. like while I was doing a really passive job, and then I had to take a drive to Salt Lake for like 3 hours, and I was like almost to Salt Lake. I'd just been thinking for a few hours. And I called my wife and I was like, I don't think Joseph Smith is like real. I don't think this shit is a thing.
Wow.
Like,
Just
I'm
like
not-
that.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
CES letter just was the final nail for me.
I heard that from so
yeah.
many people. And I now that I look at it, I see the whole chariots, how absurd. And horses and dead, like you say, millions and millions of dead bodies with no
Yeah.
archaeological evidence of it.
Yeah. There's just so many like true, like just
But we
blatant
went to
fallacies.
Gomorrah, my family living in Illinois.
Yeah.
The great thing about living in the Midwest is you get in your car and you can drive here and here and here and here. So we vacationed every year. Of course, we went to Nauvoo.
Mhm.
We went to all the church sites. And went to
What
all
is
the-
Nauvoo?
So Nauvoo is the city that
You guys are like,
I know.
yeah, Nauvoo. I'm like, what the
So
hell is that?
Joseph
It comes back when we start
Yeah.
talking about it, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I get all this.
They got
yeah.
kicked out of Missouri because they were, breaking the law. And I always this is what I said to
Polygamizing.
my husband. I said, remember when? Because Jamie was in Oregon as well. You might have been too young, but I said, remember when the Rajneesh were settling in the Bend area, and people went along with them and helped them out for a while, and then they took over, and then they started like growing, and all of a sudden they were taking over political positions, and the state of Oregon was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You can't do that. Well, that's what happened in Missouri. So they said, sure, you can come here. In fact, we'll give you this county you can live in. You can live in, I think, in Davis County. And then Joseph Smith was like, yeah, we're gonna do that, but then we're also gonna come over here. And they're like, well, no, that wasn't the rule. It was like they put him on a reservation. They broke the reservation rules and said,
They're just like,
we're
we'll
going to
take
go
whatever.
anywhere we want.
Yeah.
And we're going to take over your property. And so anyway, they got kicked out.
But
of
they
Missouri.
were persecuted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were also breaking serious
They were
laws.
Yeah.
serious
You know?
laws.
Yeah.
And so they ended up in Illinois. And again, the people in Illinois, Quincy, they welcome them. Oh, you poor people, look, you were kicked out of your homes. We welcome you. And then they took over the city and it grew.
Mhm.
And, you have to give them credit for how they turned this
For
little
colonizing.
It's a very successful business.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is most
Largest
successful.
Chicago
Yeah.
at the time, and but when you read the history,
Yeah.
you find out because it was built on the backs of
Yeah.
people that were starving and giving all they owned to this organization. And then Joseph Smith was making up stories and starting a bank and
Mhm.
all this stuff, all of these things that I didn't know
Yeah.
growing up. You know,
Not to mention all the native land that they stole and native people that they slaughtered. Yeah.
Faith is a hell of a drug,
Yeah.
as they say.
Yeah.
well, and you know, you look at the political situation, and that's what power does. I want your land too, you know. And the Mormons did the same thing. So anyway, so yeah, so we went to Nauvoo, and then we went to New York. We saw the Hill Cumorah pageant,
Wow.
and we were so new in the church. I remember watching the pageant, and they have the picture of Jesus appearing to the Nephites, and whoa, what's going to happen? And first of all, I'm like, what are Nephites again? I don't know who these people are that they're talking about.
Yeah.
So, but, you know, it was beautiful. It's so fun to see,
Yeah.
you know, and you're so caught up in the fairy tale and Jesus appeared in the Americas
Mhm.
and taught the people, and that's where the
Yeah.
indigenous people come from. And you're like, yes, that makes sense because I'm just this stupid person in the middle
Yeah.
of a
Well, you're
war.
a
and
kid
oh,
and
I'm
you
a
don't
kid.
know.
Yeah.
You're just being
Yeah.
fed all
I
of that.
watched Wizard of Oz every year. I thought it was fabulous.
Yeah.
So, you know.
Right.
That could have been a religion. That
Yeah,
would have
it's
been
a
a better
literal-
religion.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's my story. So I once I learned that, honestly, I filed my papers with Mormon.com.
Yeah.
And sent my papers in on my birthday in 2021. And I wasn't sure because I had listened to enough stories where they were like it could take 90 days. I didn't know how long it would take, so I didn't say anything to anybody. And the bishop called and
Yep.
he said, I'd like to come over and meet with you. And I
Of
said,
course, we need your 10%.
I said, for me or my husband? And he goes, for you. And I'm like, well, I think I should tell you that I've actually sent my papers in to resign and cancel my membership. And he's like,
My membership. Like it's the why.
I didn't know
Right.
that. And he
Yeah.
goes, can I still come over and talk to you? And I said, sure.
Yeah.
So he came over and he said, I said, yeah, I'm resigning. I'm leaving the church. And he said, you know, I literally was in the closet. I don't know. I had to go to the closet. I was
You were in the closet.
He said, I was in the closet.
Come on out.
crying.
Yeah.
I was just crying, begging why did you give me her name? Why did her name come to me to call you to be the next Relief Society president? And I couldn't figure out why he was giving me this message. But I finally understood that he wanted me to tell you that he loves you. And I was like,
And you need your money.
yeah. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay.
Yeah, and it'll make me feel good
I
if I
got
say
that all
yourself.
down. I don't need you to tell me that. And then he and my husband talked about motorcycles and they walked out the door and that was it.
That was
He just came over to tell me that. And I was like, so this was about you.
yeah.
You didn't actually come over
Of course.
and ask me, why are you leaving the church?
Yeah. Well, they don't need to hear that.
They
They don't care.
Yeah, that's
And I
They
Yeah.
want their numbers.
Yeah.
And my husband is still a very believing member. They got him. He's the one with the paycheck.
so currently.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
So that's a whole thing that we
I
need to
know.
discuss. But I
Yeah.
also want to ask you. So I don't know you that well. We've
Yeah.
had several conversations.
Yeah.
I've seen parts of your podcast. In a lot of ways, you feel like similar to me in terms of like I'm very. No, like I don't
Yeah.
like to be told what to do. I mean, I've been that way since I was a little kid. Like when people were like, "Oh, you're gonna change your name when you grow," I was like,
Yeah.
"What the fuck I am?" When I
Yeah.
was 12, I was like, "That's
You
not
already
happening."
knew. Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like super like, and I always have felt like if I had grown up, the more I hear,
Yeah.
like if I'd been Mormon and I went to the temple, I feel like I would have gotten there and been like, "Fuck no," and like
Yeah.
gotten right out.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, and I know like from the conversations that we've had, that you seem to be you're very headstrong.
Yeah.
You are very opinionated.
Yeah.
You're very vocal. You're a lot like me. Like you just
Yeah.
don't shut up like I do in a good way. But like, there's no way I would have either had to like unalive myself or just said fuck it to the whole thing. Like
Yeah.
there's no way I could survive in
Yeah.
that. So
As
I'm-
growing up as in that,
or at any point in my life, I am just so like, I mean, my husband, occasionally he'll be like, you need to, and I'm like, fuck off. No, like,
Yeah.
I just
very
like,
oppositional. Yeah.
that's like my personality. And
Yeah.
you seem in something not exactly like that. But how did you put that?
I think because if you don't know the history, which the history was actually hidden, and it, thank heavens for the internet. It
Mhm.
really was the internet that brought this all to light.
Yeah.
Because all we heard was conference talks.
Yeah.
You read the Book of Mormon, you go to Sunday school, you watch conference. That was all I knew about the church.
Yeah.
So all of the history that I knew came from Sunday school or conference or an
Yeah.
ensign, something written in the magazine that the church put out. So I had no idea of the truth. And, I had 6 children by the time I was 32.
And
so for the first 10 years of our marriage, I was pregnant, nursing, taking care of babies.
That would
And
keep you in.
so thrilled to do that,
Yeah.
so thrilled to be a stay-at-home mom. So I was in the schools, busy with my kids, going to church on Sunday. Yes, we love the Lord. We love Jesus. Amen. Got to go home and fix dinner. So that's what you just live with.
Yeah,
that.
I was actually
Yeah.
I was thinking as you were talking that I feel like contrary to sort of like what your brain says logically to you, or the kind of person you even think that you are.
You wouldn't.
When it Mormonism, the way it sort of ingrains itself into everything in your life and your entire like identity as a person, it becomes like manageable to have these issues, but not really need to or like feel like a strong push to abandon it, even at the cost of your own like mental health and well-being. It's just your life. Like it's just
It's fused.
it's
with
fused.
You, so you can't tell.
You're indoctrinated within it.
Yeah.
And that's like I feel like I stopped going to church when I was 15, and I actually went back eventually because it was so lonely too without it. It's so much your life.
Yeah.
That I'm also like, I'm a very logical person. I really, really struggle with faith. Even I'm working on this, but even the concept of people really just letting faith drive their actions.
Yeah.
Not even my own decision to do that, but other people's decision really it gets under my skin. And yet I dealt with it for so long. And it's like it gets ingrained in you.
Yeah, and that's what I've heard. And that's part of the cult mentality and the cult functionality of it.
Yeah. And talking about like, the fallacy of, you're in a community and you see so much good, and how could something that's not true be so good? Or how could these people be so good? And I grew up like I said, I grew up in the 60s. David O. McKay he just expanded Mormonism, and the church grew, doubled in size at least. And so I grew up with dance festivals, road shows. Dance festival where it was like not just something in the community. I lived in Illinois. We flew to Utah and performed on the University of Utah football field. And that was like, I'd never flown on a plane before, and it was just amazing. And then I went to girls' camp, and I loved girls' camp. And then when I raised my girls, I went to girls' camp as a counselor. My girls, we had such a great time. And so and my kids were all in road shows, and I directed a road show, and that was our life. And it was fun, and it was exciting. And I see what Nelson has done to the church now, the prophet that's currently, where he's just completely taken all of those social situations away, and the kids are just being raised with doctrine that's changing every day, and none of the social parts. So that's where I feel like I love this. I loved girls' camp. I loved the road shows. I loved the dance festivals. And that's where I found my friends. When my
that is another thing.
It's everybody.
Your friends.
Your friends.
Like I moved, my
family. Especially
moved my senior year in high school. So I moved from Illinois to Washington State, go to a brand new high school my senior year. And I don't know anybody, but I have 3 really good friends at church. And that was my friend group. So I didn't need to make friends at high school. I would just hang out with them all the time. And they went to a completely different high school. But that was my friends group. And I went to girls' camp with them. And I went to everything, firesides with them. And so that's what you get. And I remember one time we moved from one little city to another in Oregon. And I right away, I called the Relief Society president and say, hey, we just moved here. I need a babysitter. She gives you the name of some of the young women. You assume everybody's nice. Find out later they're not, they weren't. But you have this community. And so it was beautiful. And it wasn't until I read those books and I brought some of them, because I have to say I'm not a big fiction reader, but something as simple as Devil's Gate. I mean, this is just the history of the Martin Hancock Company, the pioneers. Something as simple as this, where it shows you how these men said, look, we got to save money. No more of this covered wagon stuff. We're going to do hand carts.
Yeah.
Look how much money we're going to save with hand carts. And then you have people dying.
Yep.
You know,
But who
Yeah,
cares?
people who have
They're winning.
been
Right.
pressured to abandon their lives under fear of judgment from God,
Yes.
like people from overseas, right, who were told you need to come to Utah or you're not
yeah,
loyal to the church
yeah.
or God.
And you find
Yeah.
out that I read Laura Ulrich's book, House of Females, and I heard how polygamy really worked.
Mhm.
And I heard what Brigham Young did. If he didn't like you as one of the wives,
Send you on a mission
he
and
would
marry your
send you
wife.
to the dairy farm.
Yeah.
Where the This Is the Place monument is now. There's a farm up there. That's where the
Bad
wives were sent.
goosebumps. I always get
Yeah,
goosebumps
when they
it's like
well
Yeah.
liked. And that's what I found out later that I didn't know then, and I was like, oh my gosh. And Joseph Smith and his 14-year-olds.
Yeah.
All of that.
Yeah.
yeah,
And you start,
disgusting.
I watched the thing the other day on a cult leader in Australia, and he calls himself Little Pebble. And he actually was sent to jail. One of the girls actually ratted out on him. He was sent to jail for he was having relations with children. But now he's out.
Ugh.
And he says, they interviewed the mother that had given the 2 daughters to him, and he said, I believed he was a prophet of God. He told me that he received a revelation.
Yeah.
This is now. And I'm like, this is the same thing. And
Yeah.
people don't see it. They
Yeah.
don't put, Jeffrey Epstein or these other cult leaders,
Mhm.
In the same category. Well, but it was different with Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
He wasn't just
Right.
marrying women.
Well, because now, I mean, it's,
Yeah. Well, and it was normal at the time. They needed
Yeah.
they needed to do this to expand Mormonism.
church.
Yeah. So many.
And like you were saying, it's like, look how
Excuses,
many
yeah.
people were born because Brigham Young. And
Yeah.
but now they've calculated and realized, you know what, actually, the number of wives that he had and the number of children, there would have been more children if those wives would have married individual husbands. They've done data to, that actually, so he had 54 children or whatever. It's like, I had 54 wives. I forget how many children he had. But it was like, if you actually count, some had 3,
Yeah.
some had 2.
Yeah.
If each one of those women would have
They would have had, like,
individually, they would
8
have
kids or
6
something.
8,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, things like that.
Yeah.
But then the other book that I read, this is just one of them, but Matt Harris's Second Class Saints.
I heard about this recently.
Yeah.
I mean, it was books like this where they just go through how was the priesthood ban dissolved. Well, it was a bunch of men sitting around. Some of the men said, President Kimball, we have to get rid of this. The other man says, no, we can't. This is a doctrine that came from the Lord. Well, we'll just wait and see. And it went on for years. And then again, Ezra Taft Benson comes up. Oh, Martin Luther King was killed. That's all right. He was a communist.
Yeah.
It's things like that where I started to go, oh my gosh, I had no idea this was
Yes.
going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So-
Wow. What a journey out. And that's that's fascinating because this is 4 years ago.
So it's only 4 years ago. Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
bananas to me. Well, good, kudos.
For 29.
But what's
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
sad
Or
is,
5, 7.
when our youngest, and this is the other thing that I have like a little stick in my craw. When my youngest son was born, we had 5 children, and he was born with a lot of complications. So I was in the hospital. He stayed in the hospital for a month, and he came home, with a lot of oxygen and things like that. Nothing from the Relief Society, nothing from the ward. There was no support whatsoever, which is fine because I'm not the kind of person that really takes help well.
Mhm.
I'm a little bit more, individualized that way. But I remember there was one lady in the ward that said, I'm going to come over and pick up your 2 little ones that aren't in school.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, it's fine. It's fine. No big deal. She's like, I'm not asking. I'm telling you. And she did. She came over and picked up my 2-year-old, and 4-year-old and took care of them during the day. The other kids were in school. And so that I could go up to the hospital and visit my son. So one lady took it upon herself to do that. So 37 years later, this son of ours passes away on
Mhm.
Christmas Day,
Oh, I'm sorry.
2022. And my husband calls the bishop. Nothing. The bishop called him. The ex-bishop called him. People would call him and say, we're so sorry, Tony. We're sorry to hear about the loss. Nobody called me because I'm gone. I left the church.
Yeah.
And that said more to me about this church than anything. It's like, I have no
You're in or you're
value.
out.
I never had value anyway. My husband served
Yeah.
in all kinds of positions of
Yeah.
authority. And I'm taking care of our handicapped son and our other 5 kids.
Yeah.
So I had no value. He was the one with value.
Yeah.
And so to have them reach out to him, and I would say, hey, did anybody at church ask you how your wife is doing? No. And I was just
Yeah.
like, okay.
They like don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I've found they like don't want to know the answer because they don't know. It's like when you leave the church, it becomes this. It's like a taboo topic all of
Yeah.
a sudden, and it's like we don't want to hear about your wife in any way because it feels like we have to approach the subject of like
Yes,
she's
I'm
not
doing
part
that
of this
stuff.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And I always felt, and this is just my skeptical and cynical mind, but I was like, do you think I deserve that? Did you not call and console me because you thought, well, you left the church. Look what happened. I don't know.
It
But,
could
you know,
be.
yeah,
I've
and
heard
just
people
stuff
say
away.
things like that, which
know.
is sort of wild to me because good things happen to bad people, bad things happen to
Exactly.
good people. I mean, that's kind of life. There are ups and downs and bad things happen, but
Yeah.
people will always prop that up, but then they won't look at,
Yeah.
the flip side of that when something good happens. There are plenty of people who leave the church and say, oh my God, like life is so much better. And this happened and I
Yep.
got to do
Yeah.
this and I married the love of my life. And like, and then they'll be like,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
you just wait,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
don't look at those things. They only pick and choose the data
Yeah.
that supports their narrative.
There's I think a lot of people, ex-Mormons like recently who have left the church, or who have left the church recently specifically, who won't express to their loved ones if they're feeling depressed, or if they're going through something difficult because they don't want to encourage this like narrative that their loved ones have that
That's true.
that it's because of leaving the church. I mean, I had that experience myself,
Yeah.
and at this point, like I don't give a fuck. I'm fine with my life. I'm good, and I don't care what my parents think about me or my family, whatever.
Well, and it's such a weird like tack to take because of course, if you leave something, even if it is very damaging to you, if it's been the whole part of your life and you are leaving your friends, your family, your entire belief system, your entire way of being, of course you're going to have some like feelings about that. Also, you've been through religious trauma and so they like carefully just move that aside. And then the analogy that I've used is it's like if there's like the family wants to have you take more of the poison, the thing that was hurting you, come back to church, you need more church.
Yeah.
And to me that always reads like if parents had an obese child and they were like, well, we better take it to the baker.
Yeah.
And the baker's like, what your kid needs right now is more donuts, more brownies, more soda. Like that's the analogy to me. Like,
or if you had lung cancer and the doctor said
here, you need more cigarettes.
Yeah.
That's what you need. You're
Yeah.
coughing because you're not smoking enough. And you're like,
Well, what they
got to
said
build
was
up a
to-
tolerance.
yeah,
Yeah, for
exactly.
sure. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too, my situation is very unique, I think, from the standpoint that when I left the church, my kids were grown and gone. Some of them had left the church themselves. So there was no conflict between my grandchildren or them or anything like that. So I didn't have that. And in my situation, which is rare, I'm finding out more and more, my husband and I's marriage is better than ever. Because I know that we're married because we love each other.
Yeah.
Not because I'm the Relief Society president and he's the bishop.
Yeah.
Right.
Or he's served a mission and whatever.
Yeah.
And he has to put up with my rants. And he gets stuck in a car with me and I'll start on something. Well, what President Nelson said today, or
Yeah.
Lori Vallow just said, "Stay in the boat." Gee, I wonder where she heard that. Before she killed her kids.
Yeah.
So do you guys talk about like, does he talk back? Like if it were me, I'd be like, how do you believe this? Like
Yeah.
it would
He just kind of goes.
It'd be
quiet.
really.
he
just
doesn't
goes
come
quiet.
back or
No, he'll just listen. He'll just go like with the SEC financial stuff.
Yeah.
He'll go, "Yeah, it was wrong. That was wrong."
but it doesn't phase. He's
But
just
it's no, because he's
That is
one of these
wild
people
to
that
me.
sees the good. He sees the good in everything, though. It's not just the church. He sees the good in, like he'll say, "Hey, I just met the neighbor across the street. Is the greatest guy." I'm like, "You don't know that. His wife could be tied up in the basement. You don't know, But that's how he goes through life.
Yeah.
He's just very positive, and he sees the good, and he loves people.
Yeah.
So for him, it works. He's a white man.
Yeah.
It
yeah,
works,
yeah.
Doesn't have a whole lot.
Yeah,
to put
but I mean,
up
I
against.
had what many people considered a best friend. I knew she wasn't really a best friend, but we were close, talked all the time,
Yeah.
did everything together. And she actually texted him when I left the church and said, I'm so sorry. I don't know how you're putting up with her. I'm so sorry to hear about this. And that was the end of my best friend and my other 2 or 3 friends that we all hung out together when we were all raising our kids. We all babysat for each other and all that kind of stuff. They're gone. And I'm like, but like you were saying, Jamie, they don't know what to do. They don't know what to say.
And you're dangerous because
And
at that
I'm
point you
dangerous.
can say a thing.
Yeah.
There's a TikTok content creator, Ryan Josiah. He does.
I love him.
Yeah,
I
he's
love
amazing.
Ryan.
He does Gay Jesus. But he says he stitched together a video, and there was a Mormon, currently practicing member who said, like, if only you knew what I knew, you would be a Mormon too. And he's like, bring it on. I want to hear it. I want to hear what you have to say. I want to hear your reasoning.
Yeah.
He said, but they never want to hear mine. Like if he's like, if you heard what I had to say and what I knew, you would leave the church today. But they're like, no. Like, shut that down. Like they can't engage with it. Whereas and I'm the same way. Like, if you have evidence that something is true, that is like beyond a shadow of a doubt, please share it with me. I'd love to hear that. But that's what's like really interesting to me is it doesn't go both ways.
True with everything. I have a quote from one of the prophets, Harold B. Lee, and he said that people that have disabilities or come to this earth and have to take on a body that is not perfect, that's because they did not live their best life in the pre-existence, but they accepted that they would take on this body as not a punishment, but just as, well, this is a choice that you made because you weren't as valiant in the pre-existence. And I posted that, and people said that's not true.
So I have heard that my father told me the complete opposite.
Yeah, but that they changed.
Yeah, which is that they were the best people
best,
and they
and they
chose
didn't
to
need to
take a
test
greater challenge in life.
I choose to live this like difficult life.
Which is like
I choose to be in pain every day, non-verbal and blind. Yes. Yeah.
That's a much easier explanation than, like our complicated biology.
Right. Like just things that like actually
and the infinite, possibilities of the universe.
Yeah. Well, like just life and biology. Yeah. And the universe.
The typicalities.
I think my biggest
all living things
that I hate is that everything happens for a reason. I'm like, no.
Yeah,
the reason is we have, climate problems, or you were drunk.
Yeah.
And that's why it happened. I mean, yes.
But, you can find meaning in everything.
Yes.
But that's not
the thing that you've been chosen by God to have that happen, or like, he came into your family. That was Saturday's Warriors thing. Yeah. He came to your family specifically,
Oh my God, the Saturdays. So
but
what is that?
That is
it was a play,
but it was made into a movie.
And it was made into a movie.
And you grow up watching it
and play. And in fact, when we went and saw the play in Portland, my son was just born. And they knew that Mormons are going to show up for that's who comes to it, right?
Yeah.
Someone's going to have a baby, right? So I walk in with my 2-week-old baby.
Yeah.
Could we use your baby in the play?
Yes, please.
So they put you in the front row, and then when it comes to the scene where the mom has the new baby, they come and get the baby, and then they walk on the stage. So he was. I always say, you were in Saturday's Warriors. So the play is all about how you chose your family in a pre-existence, and then you came to Earth. And the family's going to go through struggles, but you're going to all stick together because you're family.
And they're like watching from heaven.
Yes.
With the family goes through struggles, and they're like, oh no, I hope, that they still have me. I hope that it'll get better. And
so that you can come down. So you better be, because you might have a baby up there that's
don't have an abortion, because then
don't use birth control and have a baby whenever
things like that.
Maybe a baby crying up there to be released.
I was gonna say though, just like in that same vein of that angels choose this life, and so Mormonism really instills in, especially in like cisgender white men, a hero complex, like this idea of your purpose is to be great, and God has instilled that in you. And if in Mormonism you get a patriarchal blessing, which is where they basically tell you the future.
It's like a soothsayer. We've talked about that.
And every single thing is designed to give men this sense of satisfaction with themselves, and it drives them forward. And sometimes it makes me wonder, because so often I hear about men staying who, like in a relationship, the men stay and the women leave the church. And I just wonder how much of it is that inability to really accept.
To give up that
That sense of comfort.
Son of God.
Yeah.
Oh,
Somebody
yeah, it's
asked
a really
me once,
comfortable
like,
place. Yeah,
is
like,
it-
I'm at the top of the pile.
To have the power of God at 11.
yeah.
Yeah.
That's a little hard to turn down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you've been elevated your whole life. And then to have to step into the real world and be just another person.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could imagine that would be
Plus they're
difficult.
given,
That's a lot
like,
of privilege.
I
Yeah,
remember even
definitely.
like you say when you talk about the show, little things like I say to my husband, I was like, how nice that you get to come home from work and then all the men go play basketball over at the church.
Women
And I'd
don't
be
take
like, what do you
anything.
think their wives are doing? Oh, they're doing the dishes, they're cleaning up, they're putting
Getting the
their
kids to bed, yeah.
But and it used to tick me off, but I was like, whatever. So that's the thing. I would have these little feelings, but then I would go, whatever. It's just, and a lot of it was cultural. That was just the way the world was too.
That was, just
The women's
Mormonism,
roles, the
but
female roles. And, if you watch any Jack Lemmon movies, Days of Wine and Roses, that's what's going on at work too. So it wasn't just the church.
it's just that it's stayed. Like the rest of the world has moved on.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Mormonism, is stuck in the 50s.
I think that there's definitely a new wave of empowerment of like the patriarchy. And I think a lot of men it's specifically men do see the benefit in that and they gravitate towards it
Yeah.
nowadays.
Yeah.
And a lot of like, if you have a wife and kids, a lot of like, not for thee, but like for me, like I'm fine. I don't judge anyone.
Yeah.
Like I'm cool with whatever, but like if my kid did that or if my family did that or, like not in my household.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, I think it's less overt than what you were describing about how things used to be with this like patriarchal aspect of men in power. It's a lot more like subtle. They know the line they have to toe to maintain superiority without, being problematic or whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
without being so
yeah, and I
explicit
think
about it,
Nilsson,
although
the prophet, currently, I think that's what they're doing by pushing through doctrine, is they're saying, okay, well, we need to find more subtle ways to be very affirmative and clear, but we don't want to like make a big spectacle of it.
Right.
And I think it's snakish. I think it's
I mean, one of the things that Matt brings out in this book and the Greg Prince biography did as well was the two sides. Like this is what's said in the chamber room. This is what's given to the PR person at BYU.
Yeah.
This is what the public hears. And this is what we've talked about. Tell them this.
Yeah.
Tell them that, yes, we don't allow, Black people but it's only because they wouldn't be comfortable here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Things like that.
we get to make that
But
decision for them.
Behind the
Yeah.
curtain, they're saying we don't want Black people at BYU because we don't want interracial marriage.
Yeah.
But don't tell them that.
Yeah.
Tell them that we wouldn't want them to be uncomfortable here.
That's what my father still says currently about those things in the past is, God understood that people weren't ready for it at the time. And he
Yes.
didn't want to cause conflict in places of worship.
Yeah.
He didn't want to encourage, the people who were racist back then, to really to feel that
It is
discomfort.
amazing how we
Yeah.
fill in the blanks. Like,
Yeah.
we need this. This doesn't make sense. This is bad, bad, bad.
Yeah.
I'm just going to put this thing right here to make me feel good about it. Like,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah.
to uphold that. Like, that is fucking bananas.
Yeah. And that people will just
crazy.
eat it up.
Yeah. Well, they do because
Yeah.
they have to. They have to find a reason to continue to cling to that.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
So let's move on to your podcast. It's called She Became Visible. It's awesome. Kate and I were guests on it. It is amazing. It's all about female empowerment, but for the most part, the ones
Yes.
that I've heard, but there's
Yeah.
lots of different topics that you
Yeah.
cover. So I would love for you to talk about
Yeah,
that a little
thank
bit.
you for that because it's one of those things that being in the church for over 50 something years, it's hard to walk away. So I started out talking to other women who this is so funny, that had let their hair go gray, and we were just
Because it's a statement.
yeah,
Yeah.
and people were, and I was just absolutely
beautiful.
amazed how people would come up and say, honey, you'd look 15 years younger if you dye your hair. Or they would say, Mom, I'm not letting you come to my wedding if you don't dye your hair. Or a husband would say, if you don't dye your hair, I'm leaving you.
The fuck?
I know. And I was shocked at this because when I decided to let my hair go gray, again, my poor husband, I went to the beauty shop and I came home with gray hair. And he was like, "Oh, I like that."
Yeah.
I didn't ask. I didn't. There was
Good.
no
Yeah.
discussion, you know.
Yeah.
So
It's
I was,
beautiful. Your
thank
hair
you.
is
Yeah, I was just saying, I
Gorgeous.
love gray
But
hair.
I was
It's like,
surprised
yeah.
at the women and what they were going through. So that's how I started, interviewing other women that had let their hair go gray and listening to their mothers and people tell them how horrible they looked and all this stuff. And I was like, this is amazing.
Wow, I never even thought of that.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I kind of started
It's a whole
out with
thing.
this
Yeah.
autonomy on that level, and then I got into because I left the church, but I saw women in my demographic still their kids are gone are erased. They've done everything they were supposed to do. They've served in these positions, but now their husband is retired and he's lost his previously important position and he doesn't know who he is anymore.
Mm.
So he wants to go on a mission.
Hmm.
And he's been called to be a mission president. So now she, once again, leaves her home, leaves her grandchildren, leaves her hobby, or maybe even she thought, maybe I'll go back to school now that my kids are grown and gone, or maybe I'll go to work. I've never been able to fulfill my master's degree in
God,
business.
that's infuriating. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
see
so
where
they
this
go,
is going.
okay,
Yeah.
honey, I'll go to, Brazil with you for 2 years and service your wife again. And I
Ugh.
see them doing that over and over again. And I just thought, oh my gosh, when do you get to be visible? When do you get to stand up and say, I have a purpose, I have talent, I have things I would like to do in the world? When is that important? And so that's when I switched over to the She Became Visible. And I worked under the Mormon discussions umbrella for a long time. And so I got a little off course and into the Mormon world for a long time because, like you were saying, JV, so much has happened in the last 5 or 6 years. Constant change.
Mhm.
It's like our political world at this point. It's like every 3 days, it's like, wait, we're not, what are we doing? The
Mhm.
Mormon church, we're wearing crosses. I got it. All right, we're wearing crosses.
Is that a thing? Oh my God.
I've seen that it might
We
be.
now love Jesus. I said, I
They're
have
like
a
crosses
copy.
are
I
in.
worked in the temple. I have a copy of the temple ceremony. Jesus wasn't there. But now they have changed the temple ceremony and they literally say, when you put these garments on, you were taking on the body of Jesus. And I'm like, yeah, we never said that. So
This is new.
So this is all
Oh my
new
God.
stuff, So I
God,
got caught up
Jesus.
in all of that.
Sorry.
And but
Just-
now I've been, which is weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like-
I don't want the body of Jesus.
yeah.
Although I've seen some pictures of Jesus that I'm like, I'll take that.
I didn't think of Jesus as a sitting in the corner
Sven
kind of
Jesus,
guy.
the one from Switzerland, that's a hot Jesus. So that's but no,
We'll do a whole episode on hot Jesus.
that's hot. It's like, oh,
He's just gonna sit here and watch you guys, pretend he's not even there.
no, so I've kind of for the last probably 3 years, it's been a lot of Mormon stuff, even on She Became Visible, trying to get the Mormon women to stand up and say, no, I don't want to do that. Don't leave the church if you don't want to, but you have the right to say, no, I'm not taking that calling. I don't want to be Relief Society president for the 7th year in a row. I don't want to be the Young Women's president. I would like to go back to school and get my doctorate. And, or I would like to paint or do anything else that
Or
would
read a book all day.
share how
Or
freaking
do nothing. Yeah.
and I'm trying to give women to take back their autonomy.
Yeah.
I love that.
So that's really, kind of where I'm at. And I'm trying to kind of away from the Mormon thing and just women in general.
Yes. Yeah.
And also taking care of themselves. Because you can't be have autonomy and be an individual if you're sick.
Yeah.
Or if you're dependent on other people to help you. So I'm also encouraging health and fitness so that they can be strong in their later years.
And it seems like you, for the most part, you've had like a more healthy relationship with yourself, with the religion through you.
Yeah.
I haven't heard a lot of trauma from you that we've heard from other
I've
people.
been very lucky that way.
But I've heard from just on the podcast and even just living, we're here in Daybreak and I've gone to different events where women will open up and I'm always just like,
I know.
the level of sort of like disembodiment that they have. And I went to an event that was like it was like a woman's like moon circle thing. And I was like, this is going to be so great.
Yeah.
And I went first and I said something. I was like, I was really excited about this and it's going really well. And I was first. And then every single woman in the circle broke down sobbing about what was happening in their lives. And I was like,
Erica, I know exactly what you're saying. I had the same experience. I've gone to 3 or 4 women's retreats And I'm thinking, we're just going to have so much fun.
We're going to like let loose. Yeah.
And
then
everybody is sobbing and they're telling their life stories. And I'm like, wow.
And it's sad.
It's horrible.
And that's here. Like, I haven't experienced that in like sort of women's spaces anywhere else. Here, I literally, like, I was shell shocked. My friend who took me was like, I'm sorry. And I was just sitting there like, no. I felt terrible for everybody, but it's such a part of the women's experience because they're so burdened.
Yeah.
And they have like all this service that is demanded of them and none of the glory, voice, autonomy, nothing that, like, if you work your ass off, you should be exonerated, but instead you're just shoved aside and told to shut the fuck up. Yeah. So I love that you are doing that and like giving a voice and reaching out and doing that for yourself, which is just phenomenal and fantastic.
You should join me. I want to organize a retreat for women. Yeah. There are no crying. We're going to have fun. We don't want to throw your mother's ashes over the Grand Canyon. And we're not going to do any deep breathing. There's no deep breathing. There's no meditation. We're just going to have fun. Food.
Drink. I'll drink. You can have coffee. I'll drink wine.
Like, can we just have a fun retreat of everything?
And celebrate.
Sound bowls and crying tears. And I'm like, I don't know.
Yes, so we'll put it together. Okay, we're definitely going to do that. So we are going to wrap up right now. That was really fantastic. Thank you. Fun. It was so fun. Yeah. I love chatting with you. I need to have you on like a bunch of different episodes. We need to go on a hike. Yes, exactly. Yes,
talk the whole way.
You have so much like insight over time that I don't know. Having spent so much time in the church, and to see how healthy you are coming out of it is amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic.
Thank you.
And it's been so lovely chatting with you. And you have been a wonderful co-host. Absolutely. Thank you so much for stepping in. You were great. That was perfect. Absolutely. So super grateful that you could be here.
I appreciate the opportunity.
It was really fun.
Support was amazing as well.
Oh yeah, and tech support. She was helping with the camera. I was like, I don't know how to do this. Why is it blinking?
I know.
So happy to help. Always.
Yeah. So with that, we will conclude this episode and we will say cheers to deconstructing Mormonism. Mm.